Hey everyone, my name is Luke and welcome to my channel, and also welcome to part 4 of my new tutorial series, PixInsight for Beginners. Throughout the course of this particular tutorial, we're going to be looking at my own method of combining HA RGB data on nebulous targets. The one that we're actually going to be working on today is IC63, the ghost in Cassiopeia. This is data that Chloe just recently completed and it made a really fantastic final image, and I think it's going to be a good learning experience for anybody who wants to actually figure out how this is done. So this is just my method for it, and I'm going to take you through start to finish, and you can process alongside me because I'm going to provide all the data and the processing icons for this, so you can find those in the description box just down below this video. Get all those downloaded and ready to go, and we can work together throughout this whole thing. Now, you will need just a couple of other tools installing. There are completely free options available for this. So you'll need either StarXTerminator or StarNet 2 installed. And you will also have to install the Easy Processing Suite from Archon. This is completely free, but it's a fantastic set of tools and integral to my own processing routines and methods. Now, the tutorial processing icons, if I just drag and drop those into PixInsight right now, you can see these are going to open up over here for me. These contain a lot of tools already native to PixInsight, but also some other ones, all these down here, made by my really good friend Bill Blanchard. These are fantastic tools, and I really want people to get used to using these because I use them all the time in my own processing. So if it works for me, there's no reason it can't work for others too, and I really believe in those tools. So once all that's done and set up and ready to go, just make sure you've got PixInsight open, your tool set open. Again, that's provided for you as that file right there, and then you can simply drag a box over all of these and open them up into your PixInsight window, and we can make a start on this tutorial. So once everything's loaded in, you're going to be left with a set of cascaded windows like this. We can just simply select the one we want to appear in the top left, in this case HA for me. Click Window and Tile Windows. It's going to make everything just about visible. You'll note I'm just zooming them out ever so slightly there so I can continue to work on them. You can zoom on an image just in and out using your mouse scroll wheel. And I'm actually going to start by taking a look at this data with STF. So I'm just going to double click the icon that should be in the top right there for you and hit the little nuke icon. I'll select each image in sequence, doesn't matter which order you do this, and just STF all of them. That's a screen transfer function. Very basically, it's just a screen stretch. So the data is still linear, but we can actually take a look at the underlying nature of it. Now, this is useful for identifying any potential problems in the data, and you can start to work on them before you take the data into the non-linear phase. So in this case, if we just take a look, very obviously there's a lot of stacking artifacts on this. So if I just zoom in a little bit, you can see what we're talking about. There's black bars, there's low signal to noise ratio regions at the edges of the image where fewer and fewer frames have overlapped to create this master file. And the first thing we're going to want to do is crop all of these images to the same dimensions, as I'll preserve any alignment that was done during registration and stacking. So I'm going to use the HA window as a reference for this. Doesn't really matter which one you choose, but the tool is going to be the same. So just double click dynamic crop. It's going to open up a dynamic window in whichever window you had selected. In this case, as I mentioned, the HA. You can take with your left mouse button selected right on the corner, just take a little look at how this tool moves and how you operate it. The white highlighted area is what's going to remain after a cropping operation, so just make sure you're getting rid of all of those stacking artifacts. Don't be shy with this, just take your time, get it right in one, and you won't have to do this again throughout your processing at all. So rather than just hitting the tick box on this and it'll just apply it to that one window, we instead want to drag the new instance window over to the R, the G, and the B. So that's all done, and now we can hit the tick, and everything, as you can see, is cropped. We're already finished with that phase of processing. Now, the next thing I can see on this data, and it's admittedly very subtle, so it's maybe not the best example, but there is a slight bottom to top gradient on this, and I'm just going to tackle it in quite a lazy way, but it's going to work for me. I think DBE is what I'm going to use, the tool Dynamic Background Extraction. So I selected the HA window, as that is a good representation of all the meat of the data in this image. Regardless of the channel selected, it looks like the gradient is very similar throughout all of them. You will notice sometimes, depending on what type of data you've captured and from what sky conditions, you'll sometimes have differing gradients in your images, and in this case you may need to apply dynamic background extraction to each channel individually. For this tutorial, and the sake of brevity, I'm just going to try and use 1 dBE and figure it out for all of the channels at once. So I've got the HA window selected. I'm now going to select a subtraction as a correction, discard the background model. I don't really need to see that for now. And I'm just going to hit generate some samples. Now these may be a little bit small on reflection for you guys to actually see what I'm talking about. So I'll just up the sample radius really quickly. Hopefully you can see those pips there right now. You can see when you hit generate, it's going to place a bunch of them around the image in kind of safe spots. I'm just going to fill in some of the blanks to help make this a statistically robust representation of all the background regions in this image, so it can model a proper extraction for us. Now, any that you don't like the position of, or it's been funny about, you can just simply drag them around, or you can even delete individual selected ones if you've placed them in the wrong spot. So let's say you mucked up and placed one right in the middle of that star. It's no big worry. You can either move it away or just delete it. No big deal. That looks like enough sample points to me anyway, and without waffling on too long, I'm going to try and process to the next step. So I've just hit apply on that. We'll quickly STF that and take a look. Make sure the data looks good, and it does. It seems to have gotten rid of all of that gradient, even though it was admittedly not a strong gradient in the first place. But without closing dBE now, if your data is similar to mine, or if indeed you're working alongside with me on this data, you're probably going to want to just drag and drop new instance over onto the other images. Just double check that everything's still looking okay with an STF afterwards. So we've done the red, we've now done the blue. That also looks good. And finally, just the green channel. So yeah, I'm going to say that's fine. At this point, we can close down dBE. If you're finding on your own data that dBE isn't working for you, you may need to try instead ABE, different iterations of that. It can be a really, really powerful tool. Now, for the sake of reducing some visual clutter, I'm just going to go ahead, minimize the non-dBE'd versions of these and just move them off the screen ever so slightly over there. Sorry about the pause in the flow right here. Once again, I'm just going to make sure all these images are visually represented on the screen. So click the one I want in the top left, H alpha in my case, go to window and tile windows. Everything's back where it should be, and it's all quite easy to see. Now, at this point, I'm going to give these some simpler identifiers. So right click, identifier, I'm just going to call the hydrogen one H. The green, just shorten to G. The blue, you guessed it, to B. And 5 points to anybody who guesses R for red. That's all sorted out now, and the next step of processing, in my case, is going to be a linear fit. So we're just going to open up the tool called linear fit right there. Select the little box on the side that's for selecting the view, and we're going to linear fit everything to the H window in my case, so the hydrogen. So we've got that selected now as the reference image, so we won't be applying it to that one. We're instead going to drag and drop new instance over to the remaining 3 channels, the R, G, and B. Just wait for that to finish. Looks good. I'm going to go ahead and just double check that everything still looks fine and dandy by applying a fresh STF to all of those windows. And it looks okay to me, so we're going to proceed now to the next step of processing, which is actually going to be a slight fork in the road dependent on the processing tools that you have available to you. So normally now we'd undertake some noise reduction. So if you're using free software all around, you don't have access to Topaz AI or NoiseXTerminator, you will at this point want to select the hydrogen window, open up scripts, easy processing suite, and go to easy denoise and run it. Probably just on the H window is going to be fine. If you wanted to be thorough, then you could and should run it on all the other channels too, so R, G and B. But again, for the sake of saving some time, just a H is going to be fine for a learning experience. Make sure that Run TGV Denoise is selected, and you can simply hit Run at defaults, and it tends to do a fantastic job. It's a really great tool. It's just, its only drawback is it's a little bit slow. I'm not going to do that, so pretend that I have. If you've now taken the time to do noise reduction, and instead I'm going to skip to the next phase now, which is going to be scripts once again, and taking this data into the non-linear phase of processing. So we're going to go to easy, soft, stretch. Simply select the channel you want to work on. So in this case now I'm going to do G. So script, easy processing suite, easy soft stretch, and just all the defaults. This is fine. Go work your way through all of these channels. Only takes a moment. Whoops, if you can click. And with that, that's everything finished. It's all non-linear. Now, the next phase of this is going to actually be the combination phase, and we're going to make two separate combinations. But before we do that, I just want to quickly demonstrate something to you about Chrominance noise reduction on the LRGB combination tool. So we're going to make a combination just for the sake of demonstration, so you don't have to follow along with this at home if you don't want to. So this is just going to be an RGB. For one combination, I'm just going to go ahead, hit global without Chrominance noise reduction. I'm going to make another now with it. All right, that just took a moment, but it's finished. Just move that across to one side because we're not actually done with that tool. But here's the one without Chrominance noise reduction. Here is the one with it. Now, on the overview like this, you might not think there's any problems whatsoever, but if we just zoom, let's say right in onto the kind of tip of the ghost in Cassiopeia right there, share this view across to the other one, you can hopefully see, even through YouTube's compression, that we've actually taken out a lot of the color available in these stars, and that's something I'd really rather preserve if at all possible, because, you know, that's one of the whole reasons for doing a HA RGB combination, is to get those RGB star colors coming through in your final image. So as you can probably see, it's also nuked out a little bit of actual kind of color vibrancy from the nebula itself, and especially from all of those stars that have kind of lost all of the color. So just as a quick demonstration, that's why I won't be using Chrominance noise reduction for these. But now, for the sake of the two actual combinations we do want to make, one will simply be a HRGB combination, just like that. So this is this version right here that we already made. And a second combination I'm going to make is HHGB. Now, let's create that right now. As you can see, we've got two very different appearances to this data right now, and we're going to actually blend the two of these together and end up with a final image that will actually continue processing at that point. So you probably notice after combination, you often find a color bias in the background. In my case, it's a green bias, so I'm just going to get rid of it using SCNR. I'm not going to worry too much about dialing in any settings on this because, you know, overall it's quite well balanced data and it looks pretty good to my eye. I will give these some easier identifiers, so we're going to use V1 for version 1 of the image, V2 for version 2 right there. And now we're going to take Pixel Math, so process, Pixel Math, just open that up, reset the window if you've got anything visible in it, create a new image, and I'm going to kind of mesh these two together now using some very simple math. So V1 times 0.5, that'd be a 50%, plus V2 times 0.5, that'd give you a 50-50 combination. We can take a quick look at how that looks. Please do experiment with this and find what looks good to you. That looks pretty damn good actually right away. I think maybe we'll try a 30-70 combination. So V1 times 0.3, V2 times 0.7. This would give us a different representation of the data. And hopefully this isn't becoming too cluttered on the screen and you can tell what it is that I'm doing. But it looks to me like of the two, I'd probably rather work on this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead. That was the 70-30 combination. Not important the amount, the kind of ratios of this because you guys can just experiment with that. Take all the time you need, find what looks good to you, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day once you've discovered that. Now, we're down to having just one image on the screen right here, as you can see, and this is the one we're going to continue working on. Now, one other issue that I didn't choose to correct up until this point when everything's combined is the rotation. I don't actually like it in this orientation, so I'm going to go ahead and flip it using the geometry tools. So process, geometry, and fast rotation. Now, this particular target really does lend itself to, for want of a better word, maybe a more humanized kind of orientation. So if we just rotate this 180 degrees, as you can see now, it has maybe more that traditional appearance of a ghost floating, if there's anything traditional about a ghost. I'm sure you understand what I mean. Anyway, it looks more recognizable, and I think it kind of makes the visual flow of the image work a bit better. Depending on how you frame your targets and the end result that you're going for, what you want to portray to people, it is worth taking some time and considering how it's actually going to be displayed. Anyway, I thought it was worth touching upon, and now we've got something we can continue to work on at this point. So for the sake of this, I am now just going to do a red mask. So these are one of Bill's color masks. Just drag and drop it across. I'm leaving all the stars in place and everything. As you can see, it's a pock-marked mask like this. So this is where we're going to use the mask blur tool. Just drag and drop it across a few times until everything is nice and smoothed out, but still plenty recognizable. As you can probably see right there, there's now no more sharp edges to the mask or anything like that. All those kind of holes in the nebula have been stitched up and left alone nicely now. So we can take this mask, drop it right beneath the identifier of the main image. Everything that's colored solid red is now masked out. We're not going to be touching it, and the things that you can see are the parts that we're still going to be able to work on. So to work on those parts, I'm going to use curves. I like using curves a lot. I think they're a very intuitive little tool as part of PixInsight. They make a lot of sense to me, and I think with some practice, anybody could get used to using these. So with the image selected that we want to work on, I'm just going to hit the little circle icon, real-time preview, and that's going to bring up a preview window, as you would expect. And through this window, we can take a look at any manipulations that we want to make to the image in real time before actually applying them. Now, in this case, I've just got selected the red channel of the curves window, and from defaults, I'm just going to drag it up a little bit. I'm more focusing on the image rather than I am on what I'm doing actually with my right hand, and I'm trying to make these adjustments just look natural while emphasizing the parts of the image that I actually want to really bring to the viewer's attention. So I think a little boost in red is good. If I select now the green and the blue channels and drag those just down ever so slightly, in turn, that should push things even further towards the red naturally. As you can see, that's just happening right there. So if I just toggle back and forth on the preview, you can see all the rest of the image, as we said, it's masked out, it's left alone. But the red, the nebula itself, that's all becoming really nice and kind of vibrantly accentuated, but without being over the top. I think it's important that you take your time, treat this as an incremental process. You may get it right in one step. You probably won't. I generally don't. So you may want to take your time and have a few different attempts at this. It's not important at all that you make this in one go. So take all the time you need and all the steps you need. Now, I've just gone ahead and applied that first step. This is a preview of what the second step would look like with those same adjustments. I think it's a little bit over the top for my tastes. So I'm going to go ahead, reset the tool. And I think maybe just apply a tiny touch more on that red curve. It's a very subtle effect, but worthwhile. I think it looks good. Go ahead and apply that. Close that right down. And at this point I can remove that mask, and you could close it down too if you wished. Now we're actually largely finished with this image. This is really, it's quite good data, and it doesn't really need much in the way of noise reduction and sharpening and things like that. So I'm not going to focus on that as part of this tutorial, as it'd be kind of just forced. I don't really think this image needs it. So instead, what I do think it could do with, just for the sake again of the visual flow of it, is a little bit of star reduction. As even though these stars are really pretty and beautifully shaped, they do take away from the focus of the image slightly. So to do that, I am going to use Bill's star reduction tools. I think they're absolutely fantastic, and you guys should really enjoy using these. Now, this is how you do it. So we're going to take clone for starless, drag and drop that onto the main image. It's going to simply create a new clone called starless already for you. And at this point, you're going to have to take either StarXTerminator or StarNet 2, just at defaults, and drag and drop it onto that window and wait for it to complete. Alright guys, we're a few moments later. StarXTerminator is finished, and we've got a beautiful starless version of this image, and we're actually just going to move that to one side. We don't actually need it for anything else other than the tools themselves. So back with the main image selected, we can now use either method 1, method 2 or method 3 of Bill's tools right here. Just take a quick look at how these affect the image. So just drag and drop them across. I can see that that's had a really strong effect. Some people would probably really like that. I do too, but I think it's maybe not what I'm looking for in this particular image. I'll try method 2 real quick. That's also nice. And I think method 3, and we'll just choose once I've seen this one as well. I really like method 3 for this. I'd say that's the one that's standing out to me immediately. Now you can alter the values within this if you want to get experimental and figure out maybe some individual settings to improve your star reduction on your own data. But again, for the sake of keeping the flow of this tutorial moving, I'm just going to use this all the defaults. Method 3 worked absolutely fine. I'd be happy to present this image to anybody. I'm quite proud of it. Now, the last thing I'm going to do, because I have access to NoiseXTerminator or Topaz or whatever you like, I'm going to now pass it through some noise reduction as a last step. Now, it's really rather clean data, all things considered, so it's not going to need a terribly strong application. We'll just try at that. And that looks really good to me. Hopefully you guys can see there at home the effect that that's had. Because it's already quite a low noise image, the NoiseXTerminator really has been able to work extremely well on that little bit of remaining noise and make it look just fantastic, I think. Now, if you don't have those tools and you still want to do some last minute noise reduction, you can once again use Easy Denoise. Even though it's intended for use on linear data only, it does still work on non-linear data, I've found. So give it a go by all means and see how it looks for you. Now, I'm happy to say that that's a completed image, and maybe you guys have different methods of doing this. Anybody watching this who's familiar with this kind of thing, a HA RGB combination. But this is what I've came up with, and you know, I don't want to sound big-headed, but I think the results speak for themselves. It's an image I'm proud of, and I think the results really good from this one. So as always now, that's about it. That's all I've got for you on this one, and I hope that a few of you out there have found this tutorial useful. I know it's not a too common method, HA RGB, but I certainly thought it was worth the time it takes to make a tutorial on it. Now, with that said, if this video has helped you at all, then please do take a moment and leave a thumbs up for it. It helps me out massively, and it helps me grow my channel, and that's something I'm really enjoying doing, and I want to keep kind of continuing doing going forward. So I think that's about everything I've got for you guys. So thank you all for watching. Thank you all for your support, and I look forward to meeting you all in the next one. So until then, look after yourselves and clear skies.